Hi, everyone. Welcome to another, what I think is actually going to be an incredibly insightful and special edition of Family Matters. You may recall I was talking recently around sexual exploitation, particularly of women and children. And one of the people that was suggested to me to talk to is this remarkable young lady, Victoria Sinis. Victoria, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
You have an incredible story involved with the website OnlyFans, deep insight into what is actually happening there. But your life has changed as well. You're now working in consulting in the not-for-profit side. And I'm just so grateful that you're making the time to jump on here and have a chat to sort of, well, talk around all these actually quite heavy topics. But I thought if we could, at the start, to just give people a little bit of an introduction of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. My name's Victoria Sinis. I just recently turned 27, which is crazy for me anyway.
Oh, that's so young. That's so young. I'm embarrassed now.
And yeah, I guess as you put it, my world has very, I guess, dramatically changed in the past year and a half now. I used to work selling pornography online and recruiting girls and marketing girls to this platform called OnlyFans. And my background before that is in startups and marketing and businesses, and that's the world that I come from, and that's what led me to working for an OnlyFans agency. Through working at an OnlyFans agency, I got to see the reality of what's happening behind the scenes. Through, this thing that is taking our generation culture just by storm. And through that, had a very, very radical encounter with this thing called Jesus that changed my life in literally 5 days. And ever since then, I've almost every single day just been talking about how God's radically changed my life and what really went on behind the scenes working for an OnlyFans agency.
In and of itself, that's amazing. These elements of conversion, actually, we should touch on that. As a Christian myself, I always find it incredibly enriching as we share stories of faith. But I mean, 5 days, gosh, I'm nearing 50. You've outed yourself at 27. I'm nearing 50, and it's still quite a journey. But I mean, for some people, and most people here in New Zealand should know what OnlyFans is, even for bad reasons. Just give people a bit of a sense of what this website is, and then particularly because I wasn't aware of these agencies that you referred to. So just give us a little bit of a rundown, if you don't mind.
Totally. So OnlyFans is kind of like the new iteration of pornography. So again, I feel like so many people have heard of it, but they don't really know what it is. And that was the case for me. I'd heard whispers of, I think you can just like sell your feet on there. I think that this is positive. This is liberating. It's the new era in like go girls, whatever you want to call it, like girl power team things. I heard that people make a lot of money doing this and it's a legitimate career path. And so that was just the lens and exposure that I had to OnlyFans. And I think it's that way for a lot of people. A lot of people think that women can just jump on there and make a bunch of money. And for me, where was I going with that? So sorry. But the reality.
No, it's good. I mean, even just to jump in there. Just to jump in there quickly, because as you're saying, this OnlyFans, we get almost every week in our mainstream media, particularly in newspapers, puff stories, as I would describe them, saying how this is an incredible website for women. They make lots of money. It's so freeing and liberating. It seems to paint a very, positive picture. And as I say, our mainstream media tends to promote it as, I say, liberating and just easy for women. But it doesn't sound like it is at all.
Correct. Yes. So that comes into OnlyFans agencies. Thank you. What I worked for is, literally this thing called an OnlyFans agency. So as you're saying, people paint it as it's positive, it's liberating, it's this super easy way to make a bunch of money. The reality is it's not. And it's actually, there's this entire underground system and industry that's in place that works to promote these type of things. And that's what I worked for. So my role was basically to market girls and recruit girls OnlyFans and recruit girls to OnlyFans. And that's where I really got to see the reality of what this is. And so, realistically, people think they can just jump onto this thing called OnlyFans and make a bunch of money selling feet pics or whatever. But it's actually a full-on pornography platform. It's very difficult to make money. And like the average wage is $180 a month.
Gosh. It's just as the few things you've said there, I'm just sort of quickly unpacking in my mind. As I say, the way it's promoted is that it's just easy money for all, but hearing from you, some will make a lot, but most basically very, very little. But I'm fascinated by this recruiting agency side of things, because in my naivety, up until meeting your good self and hearing a bit of your story, I thought literally it's just someone decides to log in and just be part of it. And I'm sure some do, but you're saying there's literally agencies, and you were part of one that goes around. Without getting too technical, because we're not here to promote it, I mean, how does that work? I mean, are you just looking on social media sites and saying, well, hey, come and join us?
Yeah, basically, that's the thing. Again, that's why I love that. Yeah, this is a bigger cultural conversation to be had of what is actually our society, as you were saying, like promoting and pushing forward. And what we would do at the agency is basically we had realized at the time that the most successful porn categories was teen, fresh teen, and barely legal. So we were looking for girls on the internet that, number one, were already posting provocative content, because that would tell you that either they perhaps already have an OnlyFans account or they're more inclined to do something like OnlyFans. And so you'd look for girls that looked young. You'd look for how many followers they have and all these different things. And we had this agency account that was promoting this lifestyle. We were in real life, we were throwing these bougie parties. We had these fancy dinners. We're showing you this lavish, extravagant lifestyle. And we're saying, hey, do you want to be a part of a sisterhood? Do you want to, live this life that we live? Well, come join OnlyFans, and basically you can have all of these dreams.
Gosh. So it sounds far more professional. I'm trying to find the right words to describe something I find quite disturbing, but it's far more corporate in a way. And so was this actively reaching out to people as well? So these younger looking girls or younger women would say, hey, come and sign up.
Yeah, so you would literally do cold message people. So again, I think that that's really helpful to say that the lens of when I was in OnlyFans agency world, and for a lot of people, because we had legitimate business people that were investing in this. Like, it wasn't like it was this underground criminal bad guy thing. There was no barrier of maybe what we're doing is wrong. It was, this is a legitimate business. This is a way that you can support and empower women. It's a safe place to do porn. You can make a lot of money doing this. So we were like, in our minds, the pinnacle of like the innovation in the world of this new liberation thing, and we're facilitating it. And so again, it's all business lens, and there's no humanity for the fact that we're commodifying women and what we're actually doing, because you're so desensitized to it, because we live in a culture that desensitizes us to this and says that this is okay and that this is a positive.
Oh, that sexualization of children, of women, young girls in particular, it's everywhere, as you will know yourself. I mean, I know you engage with the crew from Collective Shout, who we did a podcast with recently. Just every mainstream brand, it seems, advertising, what's coming through the media is highly, highly sexualized. But it's always put Victoria as empowering women, but I suspect you would see it quite the opposite.
Totally. And that's the thing. Again, I think, this is a bigger conversation to be had, my friend. But like, it is, because there's so much of a lens, and there's such a wrestle of, in our Western world, of gender roles, gender identity. What is a woman? Is a woman something that is this sexually liberated human that can go and embrace her body and do as she wishes with it? But then we see the results of that, and it's like, it's creating broken, very hurt women that feel their only value is how hot they are, but we don't talk about that. And so I think that especially the pornography industry as a whole, and a big lens that I like to use, is we have to focus on the problem here. And the problem is a $97 billion industry that is shaping our culture. And so the $97 billion industry is the porn industry, just FYI for people. And so again, it's like, the only narrative that women are being fed mainstream is that this is what it means to be a woman. So what are we supposed to do? How do you navigate that, when, of course, from a faith lens, we understand, but even in faith culture, it's such a controversial topic of what is a woman. But again, how can we expect other people that are growing up in this digital world to navigate the complexities of identity when we have an industry that is screaming at them at every single second that to be a woman is to sell yourself online and to make a bunch of money, and that's the pinnacle of what your dreams should be.
I find it quite confusing at a number of levels, particularly
Mm.
the notions of feminism and women's empowerment. And
Yeah.
yet, as you're describing things, and as I observe it, they are being commodified. And it's not. I'm hesitating here to try and find the right words. It's commodification of only a very particular part, their sexuality, if you will. And I just don't see how it is empowering. It's such a contradiction, because I think I read somewhere or had heard you speak probably on another podcast where the likes of OnlyFans and Pornography is put forward as for the women are putting things out for people to consume, but
Mm.
actually it's consuming them.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I think, and that's a both and. I actually had a friend in the industry say that, and I've just stolen it because it's genius. And he works, his non-for-profit is in Texas, and they work at the point of intersection. So when buyers, because in America it's illegal to purchase sex, where back home, I think in New Zealand as well, but I definitely know in Australia, like prostitution is legal.
Yeah, same here.
And okay, yeah. So again, completely different lens, but yeah. So when gentlemen in America purchase sex, they get arrested for it, and so his non-for-profit demand disruption will go in at that point of intersection when they're arrested, and just have conversations with these guys and be like, what happened? How did you end up here? And so Joe, through I guess all of his series of experiences, has really come to realize that of course there are people unfortunately in this world that are just dark people, but a lot of these men sit there and go, how did I get here? What happened? And he's like, it's because it's again an industry that consumes people. And I got to see that firsthand because of the tactics we would use, the magnitude of it. There's so many case studies in our culture currently that you could even look at of how people are being consumed by this over sexualized culture and this pornified culture. So it's like, again, it's this mass soft grooming and manipulation on a mega scale to think that these things are okay.
Is it simply driven then by money? Do you think, is this just purely a money-driven dynamic? And I'm not thinking just the women
Mm.
involved for the men, or is there something deeper, something more corrupt? Is it just part of our human nature, the worst of our human nature, that's being, I don't know, tapped here?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. I think from the lens of working at the agency for people that exploit these people, it's money. And I think that perhaps once you get to a point where the money doesn't matter, that's where it gets, more complex. But I do think the baseline is it is money. But then I think for the people that are either doing OnlyFans or doing pornography or sex work in any capacity, I think it comes down again to an identity issue and an identity crisis because again, this is what the world tells me I should do. This is my only option. What else am I good for? And then for the males, I think it even gets even more complex because OnlyFans, specifically the allure. So just say traditional Pornhub, you kind of jump on and it's nameless and faceless people in quotation marks. But on OnlyFans, there's a relationship because I can follow that girl that I have on Instagram. I can follow her OnlyFans account, and the main allure and attraction of OnlyFans is that we can have conversations. So it's actually instant messaging, and all of the conversations are done privately. You can request anything that you want, and you start to build this relationship. So that's where it's even more complex of like, well, why do we live in an era? I saw a study that like 500,000 people supposedly globally are signing up to OnlyFans every day. And so it's like, and I think statistically, majority of the men are married and are young men that are on this platform. So it's like, whoa, okay, what's happening culturally with our young men, or men in general, that this platform is blowing up? Because at the end of the day, the foundation kind of OnlyFans is that we can sit here and have a conversation. So it's showing something even bigger that's happening with our men and their yearning for, I guess, connection in some capacity.
Well, we know from various research and studies and those who have shared their experience that the likes of pornography or that actual disconnection, like you mentioned, of course, the messaging, but it's not that usual connection that, say, a husband and wife has or a boyfriend and a girlfriend. It's not good psychologically, emotionally, spiritually on any level. And I'm glad you've mentioned the men side of things. So obviously it's easy to focus on what's happening to the women, and we should return to that, because you've talked in the past about how women joining the likes of OnlyFans get dragged further and further into quite disturbing behaviours. But yeah, what is wrong with the men, as you say, if they're younger and married, and yet this is where they're trying to find satisfaction exploiting people? This must have an impact in wider society of how these guys are going to operate or bring up their own kids.
Yeah. Like I read another study that said that 88% of porn is violent porn. And so in, I think, Australia and New Zealand, the average age of exposure to pornography is like 7 to 9 years old. And so again, what are we inaugurating our young men into and our young boys, and what is happening to them, and how are they being softly groomed as well into their perception to what is a relationship and what is sexuality, and all the different things. And so of course, by the time maybe they're, a little bit older, they find out about OnlyFans and like, sick, I've been watching porn since I was 8. Why wouldn't I jump on Only? So it's like, again, we have to understand that there is just this ecosystem that is insidious, that is going from young children all the way up. Like, I had a gentleman that I spoke with the other week who was, I think, maybe 70, potentially like mid 70s. He was telling me that he's a widower and he was married for 50 years. And now he actually is struggling with pornography consumption and like this addiction. And he's wrestling with him. And so, because he's like, I think this is what I was married, so I don't know, like, it's a great, but I don't feel good about it and all of this. And so we had to have a conversation about like, no, this is wrong no matter what. So I'm hoping that people again can understand that zooming out of, it affects 6-year-olds, it affects our young men, and it affects our old men. It's multi-generational. And so how do we then put that lens on when we're navigating, the complexities of how are our young men acting, what is happening in relationships, how does this impact women? It all kind of ties in.
Well, it stems, again, says me, who's not the expert here, but it's just turning humans into objects to be used, bought, sold. I mean, you mentioned earlier sort of supposedly nameless, faceless people, but everyone involved in the pornographic industry and the likes of OnlyFans, that's a real human being. I've often said to guys in particular that I've dealt with, but some women over the years as well, it's like, that's someone's daughter, someone's sister, in case of someone's mother, or, it's just, these are living, breathing, dignity holding human beings like you and I, and they're just being objectified.
Yeah, totally.
With the younger ones, it was interesting when talking to Melinda Tankard-Rice, who I know you will know, that collective Shout, she was pointing out, and it's happening here in New Zealand too, the sexualization of children, that they are, as you've touched on, Victoria, seeing pornography much, much earlier. And now they're becoming quite abusive, not every child, but quite a significant increase of sort of sexualized content of young, like primary school children towards their teachers. And the other element you touched on is this violence. It seems to be that pornography is getting more and more violent. This is what young people think is the appropriate way, particularly young men, to relate to women. It's horrifying.
Yeah. No, Melinda has exceptional insight into this stuff. I respect that woman I don't even have words, but it is. And again, it just comes back to like, dang, I think that parents have to understand that we don't live in an era where you don't have the luxury to not parent your child, because if you're not, something or someone will, and it will probably be the internet, and it's not going to be something that's good. I hear story after story, even of parents that are like, we've done all the precautions, we did all the things, and yet they still got exposed. Like, I know here that there was a lady that said that she got people hacked into the school network, and young primary school children all simultaneously were exposed to pornography because a hacker came into the system. And so it's like, oh my gosh, like, children, unfortunately, it's kind of inevitable. It's not an if, it's a when. And so how, as parents, can you put as much preventative measures in place as possible? And preventative isn't shut down, no technology. Like, that's not wise. We live in a world where we have to navigate this. But it's better to have conversations with your children younger of the simple things like, hey, do you know that when you jump on the phone or when you're on the laptop or iPad, that sometimes you're going to see things and it might not make you feel very good. And so if you ever see something that's maybe like a bad, like even that, it's actually a book. It's called Good Pictures, Bad Pictures. And being like, if you ever see something that makes you feel funny in your tummy, it doesn't make you feel very good. It makes you feel yucky. It makes you feel kind of like scared. I need you to come tell me immediately, because there are things on the internet that are not real and we have to talk about it if you see those things. So simple. So then now your 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old will know, okay, if I see something that doesn't make me feel good, I know I can talk to my mom about it. And so even just those small conversations can mitigate so much for what you're alluding to with what's happening that Melinda speaks on in schools.
Yeah, as I say, it's sadly happening here a lot in New Zealand as well. And again, the sexualized behavior of exceptionally young people. And that's another element of that whole dark side of the pornography. I mean, your advice, obviously, as you just said, to parents to be able to put some structures around. I mean, from what you've seen, and particularly now through your faith journey, I mean, to what extent is it about also trying to inculcate good values into these children to understand that other human beings are to be respected, not to be just turned into objects for one's pleasure? I mean, are these important conversations you think parents have to have with their kids as well?
I definitely think so. I think I was having a conversation the other day, and this lady in a podcast was saying that you kind of alluded to the faith element. She goes, Christians need to be on, I think it was the offense, not the defense. And she's like, for so many years, she's like, we're not being proactive again in what we can do to prevent things, but we're being reactive when things happen. And I think that was an excellent lens to put on of like, hey, wait a minute. If it's a faith perspective of if you truly wholeheartedly believe in Jesus and believe in the scripture and believe that is the truth, you have the answers and you have the guidance and you know the framework that is needed to navigate life, people, love, respect, value. Like our greatest commandments is love God and love others. And so it's like, how can you start to instill that, as you were saying, from a young age, and not be scared to have conversations and think that you're exposing or it's inappropriate? And I think it comes down to, again, do we understand, I guess, again, that this very deep faith perspective of, well, what is the lens as a Christian around sexuality, around purity, and all of this? And do you have the theology? Do you understand the covenant of marriage? Do you understand what a covenant is? Do you understand the symbolism? Do you understand why it's not we just wait because we're supposed to, but know that there is a heavy reverence for this, and that your sexuality and your purity isn't just about if you're sexually active, but it's actually a posture of your heart and honoring God. So anyways, I could go on forever about it, but I think that it comes back to like, are we taking our due diligence as people that say we believe in Jesus to understand these elements? And if we're taking the responsibility of raising children in this faith value system, are we trusting in God, trusting in the world? I mean, in the word, not the world, and saying like this and teaching and being a good steward of that, or are we thinking that we'll just shove it in a corner and deal with it when it happens?
This would take us on a huge tangent, but I will just touch on it briefly. But I think for me, you've hit something that's quite often on my mind and heart. Is the church needs to speak into these areas, and a rhetorical question as much for viewers as anyone is, how often do we actually hear any homilies or sermons or pastors or priests talking about these issues? And generally speaking, it seems to be shied away from. And, as I listen to you, as I've talked to Melinda and many others over the years, the ubiquity of this pornographic, violent, dehumanizing activity, trying to again find the right words. It's just around. It's like a toxic swirl around our children. And, again, my bias on this is that we need to front foot it and be talking to the kids about it so that they, as you said earlier, that actually they can come to mum and dad and say, hey, I've just seen something. Because it's not just pornography. It's some of even the violence, the physical violence of various terrorist groups that these kids are seeing. It's just like, oh my God. I at 49, I can't fathom it because we didn't have the internet when I was growing up.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, again, like, if we believe what we believe, we have the power to not only change culture, but to build new cultures. to be able to reject these things and to be able to stand. Like, if we really truly believe that Jesus is the way, then why aren't we kind of instilling that? Why are we scared? Why do we think? And it's like nothing God, like, yeah, it's just a backwards mentality, I feel, of, well, we shouldn't expose them to, we shouldn't this, we shouldn't that. And it's like, you can do things in a wise way, and we have ultimate wisdom. So why aren't we just kind of utilizing that more? And again, like, sexuality and sex and all of this is a critical part of the human experience. And so I totally agree with you that I think that the shame around it, toxic purity culture, and human to human, like, we all just try our best to do what we can, but I definitely think that we need to not live in an era where we think that we can kind of, again, shun away from it, not address it, because the world is screaming at us every single day. I saw another stat that it was like 95 million photos are uploaded to Instagram every single day.
How
And it's
many?
like, how 95 million? Isn't that crazy? I know.
There's
And
my
so I was
learning for
thinking,
the day.
there you go. And so I was like, imagine how much of that is hyper-sexualized, pornified content. And it's like, so again, the world is screaming at our children and influencing them. As people of faith, I don't think that we have we don't have a luxury to not care about these things, because it's influencing a generation. And so what side of, history do you want to be on?
And something that we touched on earlier, this, particularly returning sort of to the OnlyFans lens,
Yeah.
it's consuming these women. I think you've spoken in the past about how they are being drawn into more and more undignified behavior. In other words, they sort of put their toe in the water, but eventually they get sucked into a lot more, which is quite degrading, which obviously harms them. But it also says something about the men who are basically nuts or mixed up in the mind, whatever the right terms are.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Things like OnlyFans and accepting pornography in an over-sexualized culture is saying that, okay, we're going to give the place and space to facilitate any fantasy that you have. And so a lot of people say, well, who cares? If it's not hurting anyone, it's not your problem. I'm like, but at what point does it start to? Because we hear about people that have pornography addictions and it turns into prostitution addictions, and then that doesn't work anymore. So then they decide that they want to act out even more severe fantasies. And so then at that point, is it hurting people? Like, and then again, how many people on, like there's so many sick and twisted fetishes that are out there that exist, and OnlyFans is a facilitator of these things and saying, come jump onto OnlyFans and you can fulfill any destiny you want through this girl that you're obsessed with. And it's just like, well, again, what is that doing to our culture? What is that telling young men about young women? And then that's why we see things that Melinda speaks on so often of, there's more violence against women, there's more women getting hurt, there's more young children. And it's like, we have to understand, again, the ripple effect of the consequences of saying, well, it's not really my problem and who cares, it's not that big of a deal.
It's not something I've ever agreed with, as in somehow these behaviors have no real impact in life, that, it's just a transaction. It's not harming anyone. I've never bought that argument. I think actually there's harm immediately on the guy and the girl. I mean, even something as simple, if it's the stereotypical guy who's using these sites, well, then it's going to affect his relationship with his wife and his kids. I'd say, for argument's sake, it'll contribute probably to the breakdowns we see in society. And I'm just pleased you brought up the violence side again. We are seeing, certainly in New Zealand, and I have no doubt similar in Australia, far too much violence in general, but directed often towards women. And yet a lot in the mainstream do not want to talk about the pornography contribution to that, where it's again being celebrated. Boggles my mind.
It's crazy, isn't it? Like, I remember last year there was a young girl who a horrible, brutal death, was murdered, and the last text messages she was sending supposedly was to her friend about how she's meeting up with her sugar daddy. And I just go, well, we have a look on TikTok, and there's this thing called sex worker TikTok, and it is massive. And the biggest influencers in Australia are sex workers, and they talk about all their escorting and all their sugar daddies and how much money they get and all the gifts that they buy. So then you have a young girl who I am assuming is influenced by this, gets a sugar daddy to some capacity, and look what happens. And so there's that element of it. And then again, there's this element of what's this facilitating? And then as like from the male perspective again, well, this is more common, these narratives, more women want to do this. So then it gives an opportunity for, unfortunately, predatory people and these desensitized men to then be able to act out hurting women because it's facilitated digitally.
And again, I don't know how it fits in with modern feminism, where actually you're meant to be treating women with dignity. Instead, they're just, again, objects to be used. It's very disturbing at a number of levels. I remember years and years ago when I was young, used to actually work and support sex workers. And I remember talking to, because I trained as a priest of all things, and of all the things, Victoria, where the seminary where we trained was where a lot of the sex workers in the city of Auckland lived, and so they would come and chat. But I always struck, because when you were saying about the money and the sugar daddies, it all looks great. And I said at the start of this interview how New Zealand's media celebrates it, literally articles in the newspaper about how women are making all this money and it's wonderful. But I remember, and it's always stuck with me, this one woman who said, well, I need money for the drugs, and I need the drugs to have the sex, and so I have the sex to get the money to get the drugs. And it's this nasty, vicious cycle. And I've never come across anyone in sex work who's really happy. It's often a case of the lady doth protest too much when they say they are. There's a misery there. And I think we're seeing that with the Pornhubs and the OnlyFans, and it's driven, obviously affecting women, but driven again by men.
Yeah. And I think as well that, again, we have to attack the problem, not the person. And so the problem is an industry that guises itself as a solution to a problem. Oh, you have no money? Well, why don't you just come sell yourself? Oh, what? You're in, like a bad situation. You like whatever, you want to make some quick cash. You want to like whatever, insert problem. And the sex industry in all facets, if it's physical prostitution, stripping, topless waitressing, OnlyFans, mainstream pornography, whatever, it acts as a solution to the problem. But then when you get in it, you realize that, oh my gosh, this just makes everything worse. And I have so many friends that have told me about the addiction to money. It just bleeds through. It doesn't, you spend it there, and then you have to feed it more. Or then it's the addiction to the drugs. It's the addiction to the shame. It's like all the different things. And so it's like it inaugurates you with this deception to come into this web that this is the solution. And then you do all these things. And then again, we can kind of see the narrative play out. And so that's why we have to focus on attack the industry, because that's the problem here.
I know, and I've forgotten her name, and it's terrible. It'll come back to me. I think it's Lila. She's targeting Pornhub and the likes in America, and I apologize to her that I've forgotten her name, but it's going after the money, and I'm just so pleased you mentioned that, because that's often at the heart. And again, when I refer to how mainstream media here in New Zealand focus on it, it's money and empowerment. And yet, as you say, it's a web and it draws people in deeper and deeper. And I'm interested, though, on the money side, because you're talking about these agencies. I'm sort of surprised at one level. It wasn't my depth of knowledge. I again thought it just people signed up. But how do the agencies make money? Are they clipping the ticket on what these women are doing? And
yeah, so they'll take a percentage of the gross income that the girl makes off OnlyFans. So they're incentivized to make as much money on her OnlyFans as possible because they take a percentage.
Oh, gosh. See, there's my naivety, but it's just like, yeah. Again, it always comes back to money and exploitation. So, I mean, what was the liminal? What was the moment that changed for you? I mean, you were involved here, everything you've described, and now you're speaking out against this exploitation. What was the moment? How did this change happen?
Yeah, so for me, what had happened was I'm working at the agency and I'm doing all the marketing. So I'm doing all the forward-facing stuff. And so that's how I guess I understand the inner workings of social media, because my role was to make girls go as viral as possible, as quickly as possible. But what we had realized is, as I've mentioned, the whole allure of OnlyFans is this communication that the subscriber and the girl can have. Now, a part of an agency is your role is actually to pretend to be the girl. So we hire these things called chatters, which are people like cheap labor from third world countries, and they pretend to be the girl. So what we had realized is, I just saw your face. Yeah, like, whoa.
Yeah. No, so again, this in itself is insightful and fascinating. I mean, terrible, but it's fascinating. The falsity, I suppose that's what I'm trying to get at. The levels of falsity here. Anyway, I've interrupted you. It's bad form on my part.
So fine. It's all fake, everyone. But yeah, so what happens is you put these things called chatters on the accounts. They're on the accounts 24/7 sexting. It's a commission-based role. So they incentivize to make as much money off these subscribers as possible for them. The context is needed, because what we had realized is that if we're impersonating a person and I'm doing all the marketing on this side and the OnlyFans manager is doing all of the OnlyFans managing on that side, well, if you're a subscriber and you're talking to a girl on these two different platforms, well, you're starting to notice holes in the story. So we're like, okay, as a company, or like the back end of the business, we need to change our structure so then people don't catch on to what we're doing. So that's when, instead of doing all of the marketing, I did less girls, but I did the full life cycle. So when I actually jumped onto the back end of OnlyFans and I started to see exactly what we were doing and what we were promoting, the only way I can explain it is I'm like, I felt like I was malfunctioning, because I've never really been exposed to pornography. I've never been a consumer of it. And so I'm seeing porn for the first time, and it's girls that I know and I'm building friendships with. And then I realized this is what we're doing. And it just destroyed me. I'm crying every day. I can't open up my laptop. My heart is just getting ripped. And the definitive moment was one of the girls that I was representing as like an account manager. I looked at her and I'm like, oh my gosh, she looks like one of my little nieces, what she'll look like when she grows up. And this is one of the girls that we would lie and say is like fresh 18. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, if my niece did this, I would be devastated. And then I'm like, wait, that's someone's niece. And then I'm like, if my brother's daughter did this, my brother would be devastated. That's someone's daughter. And so it just sent me on this journey of like asking questions, asking people at the agency, what do you think about what we're doing? And that's when people are like, it's like a safe injecting heroin room. We give a safe people to, they give people a safe place to do drugs. We give people a safe place to do porn. All these things. And I just wasn't satisfied with the answers. And so that's really what set me on the journey of being like, I need to do something to offset all this bad, because I don't feel good. The drinking isn't working for me anymore. The drugs aren't working for me anymore. And I'm like, I just feel like a horrible human. And so actually this is where Melinda starts to play into the story. But which is so cool. But what had happened is I'm like, okay, maybe if I do a big enough act of good, it'll offset all the bad that I'm doing and it'll make me feel better about myself. And so I was like, okay, I'll go overseas and I'll help a bunch of refugees. And that's an extreme act of goodness. And I was building a cannabis company at the time as well. So I was like, okay, I'm so smart. I'm like, I'll go overseas, I'll help a bunch of refugees, it'll make me feel better about myself, it'll offset all the bad. And then I'll come back and the cannabis company will be up and running. And then I don't have to work at the OnlyFans agency anymore. Sick. So I was
Just
like, okay.
move from porn to drugs, you know.
Medicinal cannabis, it's fine. It was all legal, that, by the way.
Yeah, that's right. No, you haven't perjured yourself. No. It's a good thing.
That is legal in Australia. Anyways, so I was like, oh, I was 24 at the time, or just turned 25. And I was like, oh, that I went to this church as a kid. And I was like, I think they had like a refugee program. So I was like, sick, I'll sign up for that. And so I Googled this church that I went to as a kid. I hadn't gone there since I was like 8 years old, I don't think. And this is where it gets really cool. So I did this application for this outreach program, and that application never went to the outreach department, but a young adults pastor got an email and it said, Victoria wants to reach out to the church. Here's her number, call her. So I get a call one day from this random lady and she's like, hey, I heard you want to come down to church. And I was like, sure. So she invited me on a Thursday and I kind of just was like, I thought that's just what Christians did. Like I didn't know. I was like, maybe this is like the vetting process to help refugees. And so anyways, I come down to church on a Thursday and I remember sitting in my car at the front and I'm like, I just had this voice screaming in my head, like, you can't go in there. You're such a bad person. Like you'll literally burst into flames. And I'm like, wrestling with myself. And I end up walking into this church and word vomiting for hours to this woman of what I do and the struggles that I'm having. And she was so beautiful at the end of it. She goes, I really think you should come to church this weekend. We have a guest speaker and I think they'll really resonate with you. So that's when I come to church on a Sunday. And this lady in church is talking about this over sexualized culture and she's talking about OnlyFans and what she sees in schools. And she goes, she said this line and she goes, Christians are supposed to be the salt and the light of the earth and they have failed and we are destroying the next generation. And it just clicked in my heart. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not crazy. Like this is wrong. What we are doing is bad. And so when she finished speaking, I literally ran down to her and I went up to her and said, my name's Victoria. I work for an OnlyFans agency and I hate myself. And she was so beautiful. She literally goes, let's have lunch. She had lunch with me and she answered all my questions. And that was on a Friday. And like the questions were, isn't this positive? Isn't this liberating? Isn't it, ethical porn, all the things. And she just explained to me how this is hurting people and how this is wrong. And that was on a Friday. That was on the Sunday. And by the Friday, I quit the agency and I walked away from everything. And that lady was Melinda.
Well, she is phenomenal. That as I really enjoyed my chat with her a few weeks back because I often return to the thing, Victoria, that things aren't working well in society. We are seeing more violence, more harm, more divorces, more drug use. Just adding into it, I often say, "How's that great progressive experience going?" And so much of it does come back to the likes of what we're discussing, and so it is important to talk about it as Melinda does, as you do. How did the agency and your friends and acquaintances react when you told them that you were leaving because, in effect, you no longer believed it was the right thing?
So, what had happened was it was like the Tuesday after the Sunday, and I'd sent my friend a message, and I was like, I'm just really struggling with this, and I don't actually have language because I didn't have language at the time. Like, I didn't know why I thought this was wrong, but I just knew that it was wrong. And all I knew after leaving that church on that Sunday was, again, no one preached Jesus at me, like nothing, but I just was like this innate feeling of, I don't know what this Jesus thing is, but I think I have to follow it. And to follow it, I can't work here anymore because what we're doing is bad. And so I messaged my friend. They knew nothing about like the church encounter or anything, but I was like, I'm just really struggling in this job and I don't think I can do it. And so the Friday came around and they were like, how are you feeling about this RE morality? And I was like, I don't think I can do this. I don't know why, but it just makes me so sad. And I really struggle. And unfortunately, bit by bit after that, things just got really, really ugly, as they do, I guess. And then they ended up trying to sue me. And then, yeah, that's all figured out. That happened, a while ago. But yeah, that was kind of that. So the disintegration of very long friendships of, every person that was my friend, basically, of the cannabis company. And yeah, then we had a sneaky little lawsuit in there, but it kind of all worked out.
It sounds like really quite the journey, courage and bravery for people like yourself to make these calls and decisions, because as we've touched on, this pornographic industry is so ubiquitous, so dominant, and as you've pointed out a few times, well moneyed. So I'm not surprised that they tried to come after you legally. So how are you finding now the response when you go around and speak, as you're doing with me here? You've done other podcasts. How's the reception? How are you finding that as someone who now is a face and a voice calling this behavior and the likes of OnlyFans out?
Yeah, I think it is so exceptional going like I'm really privileged that a lot of the spaces I speak in is Christian faith-based spaces. And being able to talk about this and see young people come up and be like, I struggle with porn, or like there was this young boy and he came up after we finished speaking and was just like shaking and trembling, and he's like, and he was like 13, and he's like, I'm addicted to porn and no one knows, and my girlfriend and there and you could feel the shame on him. And like, even when I'm like, do you understand that God loves you and that he sees you as pure and you are valuable? And he just didn't understand that because of he was so buried in shame. And it was just like, it's those moments that matter, because we got to pray and you could even see his countenance change through prayer. And then he had older men, safe men, his pastors and other mentors that were now let in on this. And I remember like 20 minutes later, I looked over and this young boy is surrounded by men praying for him, being like, hey, we'll mentor you, we'll help you, we'll guide you, we'll support you. And I'm like, that's what matters. Like little girls coming up to me again, all in faith-based spaces, young girls being like, even micro things like, I watch this content online and it influences me. It makes me feel that I have to get boys validation, and I don't want that anymore now that I know what's happening, now that I understand. So for me, to be honest with you, like that stuff, that's what it's all about. It's like kids' identity is destroyed because of this. And so being able to be a facilitator of them understanding what's happening so they can have a lens on of the realities of social media and then just receive the love of God. That's the best thing. I love that. That's probably like the highlights for me in like ways that this is received, is getting to talk to young people and see how God really just impacts them through it.
Oh, it's clear that your work and advocacy is changing lives. I deeply admire what you're doing, as I say, the courage as well. But, to put in a Christian lens on it, this is that whole story of redemption from, terrible things. God can redeem and make things better. And I just think you're a wonderful conduit of that. So I'm very conscious of your time. You've been exceptionally generous, but I just wonder, what would be your sort of, if you will, final bit of advice, particularly to women who are going on to OnlyFans, and what would be your thoughts or suggestions to the men who are logging in to this fake reality?
Yeah, I think from the perception of men, specifically OnlyFans, I really hope that you understand that it is fake and it is not real. And you are probably talking to some dude in the Philippines that is being paid a commission-based role to pretend to be a girl to extort you for money. It is not real. Pornography is not real. And it will make you the worst version of yourself possible. And it will bleed into every single element of your life and slowly destroy it. And we need to be harsh with the language that we use, because this is the truth and not even a little bit is good for you. And I think that there is no shame and there is no condemnation. And it is okay to talk to people about struggling, but you need to be real and open and honest about the reality of it. And just know that there is so much, so many tools and resources that do exist out there, even if it isn't in the confines of your church. But yeah, that it needs to stop. And it's fake. And then for young women, I would say, if you are enticed by these lifestyles, so two things is, again, number one, understand that you're probably not going to make a bunch of money and just sell feet pics on there. You're going to do full blown pornography and earn realistically $180 a month. And your content is not protected behind OnlyFans. I have people that I know that have their porn on Google Images that is on there forever. I have people that I know that have left OnlyFans and gone into different industries, and their old subscribers have found all their new clients and sent their pornography to them. So unfortunately, there is ramifications of this, and we need to, again, be real about that, but also understanding that if this is something you're tempted to do, I would just deeply, deeply, deeply encourage you to sit there and ask why, and put a timer on your phone for 5 minutes and go, why do I want to do this? I need money. Well, why? And when you can get to the root cause of a why, then it doesn't have a power over you anymore. And that's, I think, a really easy thing to do is, if you're considering it, put a timer on your phone for 5 minutes, ask yourself why, see if you can get to a root cause. And I think that will dismantle a lot of the allure as to why you think you should do this.
I have to say, for me, that's quite a profound insight, and you touched on it at the start as well. It is the why. The desire to go into the pornographic space, OnlyFans or whatever, is a symptom, as I think about it, to something much, much deeper. Can I just thank you for the eloquence of what you're doing and saying, particularly to the guys and obviously to the women too. I think just your ministry, in effect, Victoria, is just so vital. I just keep saying this pornographic element is just so ubiquitous in society. It's changing how particularly our little ones think and act, and I think it's going to have serious consequences for society. But I take great heart when great people like yourself not only find truth, but have the courage to speak up, and then to come and, as an Australian, speak to a Kiwi. That's always a good thing too.
Look at us bringing unity to the thing.
Victoria, look, thank you so much for your time, and look, thank you for what you do now. In fact, you might just quickly, because people, you never know, who are listening to this may want to connect into your consulting work, and is it the NGO space? So just tell us a little bit about that very quickly, what you do now.
Yeah. Also, thank you so much for having me, Simon. This has been an exceptional conversation. I really appreciate it. But yeah, so what, I guess, ways that you can connect with me is either through the business Creating Gems. So my background is in business. So I love to be able to use all of the insights I have for any type of non-for-profit or countercultural voice that works in this space. I either help with consultancy to forward your mission, basically, or I also do OnlyFans consultancy stuff. So the real deep dive intricacies, so then you can take this information and implement it into programs that you already have in place. So they're the two elements, I guess, of the consultancy stuff that I do, and I love it. So yeah, I'd love to work with anyone to help them forward their missions in seeing, a new culture being built. Well,
for our viewers and listeners, particularly if you're in Australia, but of course we're in a global environment now, if what Victoria is doing sounds like you, jump on, it's creatinggems.com is sort of the entry point, isn't it? So check that out there. Victoria, again, I am exceptionally grateful for you sharing, obviously, your experiences and also a bit of your faith. It's a real blessing, and just wish you really well.
Thank you so much. This was great. I really appreciate it.